Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Rihanna Kingma, and I'm one of the comms advisors at PRINZ. Today, we are joined by Olivia Wix, who is a communications advisor at Palmerston North City Council. So today, she'll be talking you through her Supreme Award-winning entry. So she'll be talking you through the journey. Before I pass over to her, so the webinar is being recorded today, and the recording will be sent out tomorrow once our new website goes live. Feel free to ask questions throughout using the Q&A button at the bottom. And I think Olivia will answer questions at the end. Cool, over to you, Olivia.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Let me just pull my PowerPoint presentation up for you all. And of course, this happens. Hiara Kotahi means the pathway that brings people together, and this is really the story of how we used Hiara Kotahi to get our city and our residents to really fall back in love with the Manawatu River. So just some context in terms of how we work at council. So we have a number of different units at council, all responsible for different things. One of our units is marketing and comms, and that's the unit I'm part of. And we have a communications team which has 4 communications advisors, a web specialist, a social media specialist, a visual specialist, and a boss. So and each of the comms advisors looks after a different unit in council. So I look after our infrastructure unit, which is anything to do with the 3 waters, parks, roading, recycling, rubbish, our river, construction. Pretty much I joke that if you're going to complain about something, it probably lives within my unit that I look after. So where Hiara Kotahi fits in is it's both a roading project and a parks project. So this is Hiara Kotahi, or this is the main bridge of Hiara Kotahi. So the entire pathway is about 10 kilometres long. The main bridge, the one that you're looking at right now, is Hiara Kotahi. And along the pathway, we have 4 other bridges over crossing other streams that flow into the river as well.
Sorry, Olivia, it's not actually showing.
Oh. Let me try that again. I did joke this would happen because I'm not the best with technology sometimes. Can you see my PowerPoint now?
Yeah, so you just need to put on full screen now.
Perfect. Well, you didn't miss much because I literally am only up to slide 2. There we are. So this is Hiara Kotahi. This is the main bridge. And as you can see, it is beautiful. So this bridge crosses the Manawatu River. From where the photo is taken is from the city side, and you're looking towards Massey University. So this is Palmerston North. Our boundaries are actually a bit bigger than this, but this shows our where most of our residents live. You can see that the Manawatu River here comes along the southern side of our city. Over here you've got Massey University and you've got Linton Camp. Here in Linton we also have New Zealand Pharmaceuticals, which is one of the big companies that makes medicine for the country, and Corrections also have a prison there. So we've got a number of around 18,000 people either go between Linton and Massey each day. And so you can see the road that connects up here is Tennant Drive, and this is how people who are travelling from Linton or Massey into the city before Hiara Kotahi would have gotten into the city, and they would have crossed this. So if you've ever been to Palmerston North, this is the Fitzherbert Bridge. This is our car bridge essentially. So if you're coming from Welly up, this is how you get into our city. But Hiara Kotahi was all about how we get the cyclists and the pedestrians who commute out to Massey and to Linton to give them a safer route to travel essentially. It was all about that commuter element and giving them that safe option. So consultation happened, and oh, let me just Consultation happened a few years ago, and sorry, I've just seen that I was asked to share my face. So consultation happened a few years ago to figure out where this pathway could happen, and a bridge was obviously decided, but the condition of us getting funding was that we had to make it just a pedestrian and cycling bridge and pathway. And in Palmy, we love our cars. We love the fact that we have a 5-minute commute anywhere in the city each day. So that was a bit of a bitter pill to swallow. So we consulted on a few different locations of where this bridge and pathway could go, and in the end, this is the location of it. So this Te Ata Kotahi, the main bridge, is in the front, and behind you will see the Fitzherbert Bridge. Along the left there is the river pathway and the Esplanade, which is like our biggest, most popular park in our city, and on the right is Massey University, their farms before you get to their main campus. There's actually only 1.5 kilometres between the two. So this route actually between the two bridges has become extremely popular. Just to give you a bit more visuals of what this actually looks like. The photo you can see now is Linton End. So if you were standing at the very bottom right-hand corner of this photo, you'd be at the military camp. You can see one of the bridges that crosses the stream there and follow that limestone path all the way up to the city in the background of that photo. And the other, this is what the pathway looks like all throughout. So you travel through things like forests, parasites, dairy farms, lots of really treasured natural bush. It is absolutely beautiful from the minute you start to the minute you stop. This is Te Ata Kotahi from the air, and this is one of the photos I wanted to show you because it was a bit of a part of our storytelling. You may be able to see that it looks like a tree has fallen over, and that's exactly the intention. So when Māori lived along the river a couple hundred years ago, the river was surrounded by karaka trees, and the karaka trees were shelter, but also the berries on them provided one of the key sources of food for Māori in our area. So in the photo here, you can see that the bridge here is like the trunk, and then this is the top. And these little yellow seeds that you can see scattered around represent the berries on the tree. So you can probably gather that the cultural history of Te Ata Kotahi was extremely important with everything we did. Obviously, you know, a couple hundred years ago along the Manawatu River, lots of hapu lived in different parts and had full power sites set up along the river. It was a really prominent food growing area. The bit between the two bridges on the Massey side that I showed you earlier was huge kumara growing fields. The other reason it's culturally significant is that the site where this main bridge is was the site of one of the biggest battles in our city that killed a couple thousand people around 200 years ago. So you can see in the lighting and stuff that of there, that's all been picked really intentionally alongside iwi so that it's sombre, that it reflects, I guess, the important historical features of what happened at that site. Obviously, I guess the main way you can tell cultural significance was important is because of the top of the bridge, which is what makes it really iconic. And so the pattern tells a story of the big circles at the end of each of the pattern. They represent a thing called the pūriri moth, which lived in the karaka trees, and then the koru patterns up it represented previous ancestors that had lived around this close vicinity of the bridge. And then the last reason that the cultural significance was really important for this project was at the time that we opened this last June, our council was in the midst of discussions about having a partnership agreement with Rangitane, who are our mana whenua, and also having a co-management agreement for one of our key river sites, which is slightly north of Te Ata Kotahi. So we had a $1,000 budget. So this project cost $19 million. It was funded by people from the government's Cycleways program, from NZTA, PowerCo, Central Energy Trust and us, and Rangitane, Massey, the Defence Force and Horizons, which are our regional council, were all our key stakeholders. So with $19,000, it was, I guess, a bit of a shock to find out we had a whole $1,000 budget to promote it. And any of you who've done construction projects know that to do with the traffic management plans of when these kind of projects begin and end, a big part of that is letter dropping and reminding people of how the traffic will flow differently, how the roads might work differently, parking, and most importantly, how we're going to mitigate that risk. So with my $1,000 budget, I was pretty much told immediately that that was going to be cut to $500 to cover this mass letter drop for our city. So I'll tell you what we did with the other $500 shortly. So our objectives were quite simple. That was that we wanted media coverage locally, as well as coverage on a TV network, a newspaper outside of our city, and a radio network. We wanted to make sure that at least one Māori media outlet covered the opening. That was something that was important both from our perspective as a council, but also our iwi's perspective. When Hiara Kotahi, when the business case planning and stuff was all happening a few years back, they estimated that 1,000 people a day would use Hiara Kotahi. So our goal from our roading team, and I guess by default from all of our stakeholders, is that we make sure that that target is hit and exceeded. We had a goal for social media reach on Facebook of 20,000 and 100 shares in the first 3 months. If you look at our Facebook page now, you'll see that we have just under 20,000 followers, and our city has just over 80,000 people. So we've got a really good market share in that space. However, at the time of this, way back last June, we were sitting more around 13,000 followers. So that has grown a lot since then. We were going to, in Palmy, we have this saying that we've been trying to get off the ground for the last couple of years called Palmy Proud. Sometimes it has a hashtag and sometimes it's used in other contexts, but it's really about trying to build the reputation both of our residents and our neighbouring districts about that we're actually a really cool place to live. So we wanted to start using Instagram more. So most, you might be surprised to know that Palmy is the second youngest population in the country, and by 2025 half of our population is going to be under the age of 20. So it was really important that we started using Instagram more as a tool to communicate with our residents. So we decided to use Hiara Kotahi to both build our Instagram audience, but also get that hashtag being used more prominently throughout our city. And then the last one is about the Manawatu River framework, which our council has 3 catalyst areas that we focus on a lot. One of them is city centre, one of them is sustainability, and the third is the river. And the river one comes, I guess most of you will probably have beliefs or opinions about the Manawatu River, which stem from some reports that came out about a decade ago that called it the dirtiest river in the Western world and things like that. And so lots of the councils and organisations and things around here really wanted to change that, both from a water quality perspective, but also a reputation perspective. So our council, we do that through infrastructure, but also events and other things. And so the key goal of this framework or this strategy is that every year there is more things to see and do at our river. And we know through behaviour change that the more people love and care about something, the more they're going to protect it. So by default, water quality will improve. Right. Research. So research for this project was broken down into a few key areas. The construction. So I had briefings from the project managers, engineers, designers, all about the construction of the bridge and pathway. So we used that that kind of data, like how many kilos of concrete, how many tons of limestone, all of that kind of data came in really handy down the line. We also had a number of site visits during the construction. And I guess that really was the turning point for me that made me realise that for all this time it had been billed as a commuter project, but actually this should be a recreation project that we're talking about. Like, how many places in our country can you walk 5 minutes from your CBD and get to walk along a beautiful river, forest, dairy farms, have an amazing lookout? You know, it's a pretty rare feature. So that was the point that I kind of realised we needed to change the way we were talking about this project. The cultural history of the site, so had lots of meetings with the rangitane, our iwi, to learn about like the history of the river, how they used it, about how they used to live around this space, and their stories about the karaka tree and the design, and their like general iwi history and how that ties in with this new project. As part of council work, our roading team does research and surveys all the time on how people commute, and cyclist behaviour. So we are able to get quite a lot of information about like who cycles in our city, why do they cycle, how long will they choose to cycle for each day. We also spoke to like Massey and the Defence Force and Food HQ. Food HQ are this organisation which has home to a bunch of food innovation companies or organisations or Crown Research Institutes, and they're all based right by Massey University. So I'm talking like Ag Research, Fonterra, you name it. If they've got something to do with food, they're probably here in Palmy with an office just there. So talking to all of their staff about their cycling habits, how we could convince them to cycle more, that kind of thing. And then in terms of river user trends, our parks team also does surveys each year, and the river is considered a park, so they do surveys there. And the main feedback that we were getting from that is that people would visit the river once a week, and they'd only go there for exercise, and what they wanted the river to be used more for was recreation and somewhere that they could take their families or their dogs. So that helped shape a lot about what we ended up doing tactically wise. And then communications insights, which was you know, seeing how other places, how many other organisations had launched key infrastructure, being really clever with communications, figuring out who are all like the Facebook pages that all the cyclists are following, who are all the pages that commuters are following, what are our big, you know, how do we hook our local audience in different ways, and seeing where they're consuming information from and making sure we can bring them along on this journey. So we identified a few key audiences, families. So we identified them as being parents under 50 with young children who are under high school age. They didn't have a large disposable income and were looking for safe and free experiences with their children. Commuters between Massey, Food HQ and Linton, they were generally time poor. They wanted a safer route. They were a wide range of ages, ethnicities and socioeconomic statuses. Recreational users was that they were all ages, liked to seek adventure, wanted to exercise, but also do things like have picnics and stuff. Their dogs were actually a family member, that they might enjoy photography and bird watching, and that they wanted to be able to come to the river for, say, a 20-minute walk or even like a day-long walk. So a real mix of what they were after. Event planners. So one of the key ways, obviously, that we can get people to go to this new piece of infrastructure and walkway in our city was to be able to hold events there. So figuring out who had held events there in the future, in the past, sorry, and how we could get more people down there in the future. And so a lot of those discussions were actually was how can we remove some of the, you know, council bureaucracies that sometimes we have when it comes to those kind of things. Mana whenua, that's kind of a given. I probably explained that well. We wanted them to make sure that the project and the delivery of it and how it was opened was respectful and in keeping with their beliefs about our river, and make sure that their storytelling was front and centre of this project. And then lastly, our project partners, and we wanted them to feel a real sense of pride that they were involved in such an awesome project like this. Don't worry, I'm not going to read the key messages, you guys can read them, but they really focus on safety, recreation, the cultural element, and talking about some of the stuff in a really descriptive way. You'll see that it's really colloquial as well. We try and talk with our audience like they talk to each other. We want to not seem, you know, kind of high and mighty. So if you look on our social media pages and stuff like that, we have a really clear and consistent tone with how we talk. We want to be seen as, you know, friendly and, you know, caring about our community. And also, you'll see that we've got quite a lot of te reo in there. Using Māori in our comms is really important, especially in our river space. So our residents will not be, things like awa is just now a second nature. Instead of saying river every time, we want to be able to really use it as a tool to teach as well. So our strategy focused on 3 key areas. So media coverage, and that's targeting local, national and niche media with different angles, and supplying a really thorough toolkit which had images, videos, fact sheets, maps, just really making it really easy for them. Social media was to have a thorough and sustained social media campaign in the lead up to the opening, targeting groups, using analytics to get the right information to the right groups, collaborating with other organisations and Facebook pages, so actually teaming up together to do joint content. And front and centre, the most important thing was photos and video, and we're really lucky that we have a visual specialist in our team that helped bring that to life, and that also then prompted some user-generated content as well. Community relations, I talked about event partners and things like that, but working alongside some of our partner agencies, some of our big businesses, our bike shops, our schools, those kind of groups to really get our messaging out there. So in terms of implementation, I will talk about media first. So I feel like I can say this because I am a Palmy girl, even though I have lived away for quite a long time, but national media don't really tend to come to Palmy unless it's a bad news story, and generally that's crime. So to get your TV networks and stuff here is actually really hard work, and so what we did there is was speaking to national media, to individual reporters and producers, and giving them all different angles. So we didn't just send out a media release, like every specific journalists from every different organisation got a specific angle that no one else had, to make sure that we could have it be talked about, and that there was no, I guess we didn't want them to feel like they were getting the same information, the same interviews, all of that with everyone else. I also didn't just go for like one media outlet once. So I guess an example is with Radio New Zealand pitching an angle to Morning Report. Then for afternoons, I had a student who was going to save 10 minutes on his commute, so pitching him to the afternoon show. Then our iwi spoke to Te Manakotahi. So across a couple of days on RNZ, we had coverage on most of their key programs, and we did that with most of our big broadcasting networks in New Zealand. We supplied drone and video footage, photos, all the cultural information, construction, stats, maps, everything they could possibly want. And pretty much once they saw this drone footage, we managed to draw them in. So I can have a break. I thought I'd show you what this B-roll we sent them was.
Just to note, the video doesn't actually have sound, or it just has background sound. I'll just unmute myself. You can see there that what we have on our hands in Palmy with this project is utterly beautiful. I saw that there's a question just came in about whether everyone was supplied the same drone footage, and
The answer is we gave both TV networks and so different shows on those TV networks the same drone footage. I guess one thing just to touch on quickly is you might have noticed that there's no people in there, so it's not your classic marketing shots. So one of the things that came up for us was that because the tapu hadn't been lifted off He Ara Kotahi, our iwi asked us not to release any images until that tapu had been lifted of people on the bridge who weren't the construction workers or the project team who'd been involved in that. So the TV broadcasters got given that footage, and then what we did the day that He Ara Kotahi opened was we went out and we did some of those classic kind of marketing shots, and we sent out extra footage to other reporters, to other newsrooms. And what really worked with that footage, that worked really well for us, is the TV shows, the TV news programs all agreed to come to Palmy, and then we also convinced them to use that footage for the morning. So on both breakfast and the AM show on the morning He Ara Kotahi opened, that was in every news segment using that footage. So I guess the video footage, I can't say how powerful it was. Hopefully it has got you guys all on board and maybe wanting to come to Palmy now too. In terms of other media, with local media, obviously they were going to be more interested. We're really lucky in Palmy, we've got two main radio stations. We've got More FM here, which has a local morning show, and they are really targeting who are pretty much our classic Palmy residents, which are people in their 30s, 40s and 50s with young kids. And then we have another radio station, The Breeze, which then targets your older audience, and we've got a daily newspaper and then a weekly newspaper as well. So we're very blessed. And what we did with our local media is every week we gave them some new information. So one week they got all the construction stats and we did a round of interviews on that. Then the next week we did stuff on the cultural significance. Then we did exciting things you might see along the way. So some special trees, some of the special bird life and things like that. So did specific interviews on all of that, so that if you were a resident and you were in our community, you would have been hard to not hear something about He Ara Kotahi in those few weeks leading up to the opening. Niche media was also a big focus because this project was quite unique in what it was, and the partnerships and stuff involved, but also just its sheer beauty. It was about pitching it in lots of different ways to increase some of that exposure. So I pitched to like engineering magazines, architecture, design, construction, environment and recreation publications, all with different angles, and we supplied all of our images to them. So we made it really easy for them to cover. So we've been in, like the AA magazine and stuff did a spread. So those kind of niche media, I guess sometimes they might get overlooked, but they're really powerful in terms of getting people to come and actually visit our city, so not just residents. Move down to the next slide. So social media, we had a real dedicated campaign in the 8 weeks specifically leading up to the opening across all of our major channels. So in Palmy, our major channels really are just Facebook and Instagram. We have Twitter and we have LinkedIn, but Palmy people don't really use Twitter, and LinkedIn is still not really taken off as much in Palmy as it is used in other centres. Those kind of channels, what we did is we talked about our partnerships with some of our organisations and things like that instead. So we teamed up with cycling, running, walking, parent, tourism and iwi social media pages to give them like sneak peeks, tasters, some special information that would be useful to specific groups. So, you know, pointing out to the parents' pages that He Ara Kotahi is fully pram friendly, so it's easy for them to get on and off, and then pointing out spots where they might want to have a picnic along the way and stuff like that. And so that kind of thing was really powerful. When it came to Facebook, we didn't pay for any boosting or any advertising, so it was just our natural reach. On Instagram, we coincided the opening with using that Palmy Proud hashtag and trying to get our Instagram off the ground really well, and that's where the $500 came in, because you guys all know that $500 in Palmy, that might buy you a third of a newspaper ad, maybe a week's worth of radio ads on one station, or a week or two social. So it wasn't really too much. So we decided that we were going to spend that that $500 on a bike voucher for one of our local bike companies. So everyone who shared an image of themselves on He Ara Kotahi for the first 2 weeks after it opened went in the draw to win that bike voucher. And so that was obviously to try and drive our Instagram, to try and drive that hashtag, but also for that user-generated content. If everyone was seeing everyone here at Hiata Kotahi, that was going to draw more people along to it. Right. Community relations. So when it comes to the partner agencies and major businesses, we created specific toolkits for them. So for Massey, for the Defence Force, how long would it take each of their people to use the pathway? Where could they get on and off? We gave them maps, we gave them everything they could possibly want to know or use. On the day Hiata Kotahi opened, so after that tapu had been lifted, the first thing we did is we took the communications advisors out for all of those organisations and gave them sneak kind of peeks at key parts of the pathway to really kind of get their excitement built up so that when they went back to the office, they were bursting with excitement to tell everyone. In terms of other community things, we got in touch with bike shops, event planners, schools, cycling groups, running groups, and nature groups, and shared information that was relevant to all of them. Again, specifically for them. So the nature groups got things about like the birds and the animals and where to take a good photo from and that kind of stuff. The schools was more about how far the kids, that if they travel from the Linton end, it's a bit more hilly, so they might get a bit more tired. So if you're taking young kids out, start from this end, that kind of thing. And you can see here on the screen that one of the coolest things we did is we co-hosted a pop-up park run. So our park run in Palmy normally is just down the road from the Fitzherbert Bridge, so the car bridge. And it's a really popular, every week there's a few hundred runners. So Hiata Kotahi opened to the public on a Friday afternoon, and so for the Saturday morning we had a park run, and you can see that there were just under 600 people on the event page. When it came to the actual event, we had a couple hundred people do it, and again they were sharing their content on their social media. They were going home and talking about our new pathway. So that was a really successful and really quite simple and easy thing to do. I mentioned a couple of times that we had a map, and I've just realised I cut off the key, but Palmy is one of the most regionally diverse cities in the country, so we wanted a map that you didn't have to, I guess, be able to know lots of English necessarily to be able to read it. You could identify key parts from the pictures, and that was important for our eyesight as well, that they had a really straightforward map. And you can see here, let me get my mouse isn't working, the blue and the orange and the green line, and the key underneath it shows you how long those distances are if you were to walk or to cycle it. So really clear information, so that if you decide you only want to go for a 20-minute walk, you might do the orange line, for example. We also did the letters to all the nearby residents and stuff, and they all got a copy of this map as well. This is Palmy Proud. This is the magazine that our council produces quarterly that goes out to around 40,000 houses and businesses in our city. This was the third issue we had, and it was all laid out, ready to go. We held off the print just for Hiata Kotahi's opening, so it actually went out a week late. And then, so because it opened on a Friday, we quickly got all those images in there. On the Saturday, went to print on the Monday, and was being delivered in houses that the week after. It also went out to, we send it to lots of cafes and things in nearby cities. So like Wanganui, Hawke's Bay, Wellington. It's not unsurprising to see a Palmy Proud magazine there. And this is, the magazine it's not a council propaganda type thing. It's really tourism-y. It's totally making Palmy seem like a fun, cool place to come and visit and experience. So a real like tourism element to it. Our website played one of the most important roles in what we did. It was completely overhauled to focus on Hiata Kotahi for the opening. We had maps, photos, videos, multiple access points and Q&As, and covered a wide range of different topics for different people who might be using it. If you work in a council, you probably know that the top 3 things on a council website always, without a doubt, is rubbish and recycling days, rates for your house, and a cemetery search. And this was one of the few times in our website's history that we've managed to beat all 3 of those things over a period of time. So as weird as that sounds, that was a pretty cool thing to do. In the first 2 months after Hiata Kotahi opened, more than 8,000, it received more than 8,000 website hits. Last year, the map was the most popular download on our website, and just, I guess on that, He Ara Kotahi didn't open till June, so it was up there for 6 months of the year. And more people read about our pathway than our most iconic park in our city. And one of the things that we've been really intentional with is using social and web to fuel each other. So you can see there on the right, we've got an A to Z of He Ara Kotahi. So in the first few weeks, people were asking really specific questions about, is it a dog on leash or off leash? Can a horse go on it? Will there be lighting in certain parts? Where are the rubbish bins? Where are the picnic tables? All of that kind of thing. So we made a specific web page specifically about all those kind of questions, and then we loop it back when we answer our social media comments, referring people to keep checking out this page as well. So the most important thing, I guess, is the results. So our first objective was about media coverage locally, getting on TV, newspaper and a radio network. So we had every major media outlet in New Zealand cover the opening of He Ara Kotahi. In the first month, we had 65 online stories alone, local coverage every week in the lead up to opening and the weeks following. We also had some significant international media coverage. So back from my old journo days, a couple of my good friends now work at BBC and Al Jazeera and The Independent and The Telegraph. And so I pitched it to them because that bridge doesn't look like any other bridge anywhere else in the world. And again, we supplied some of that drone footage, and it became standalone stories overseas, which was really exciting to see. Ensure at least one Māori media outlet covers the opening. So we had Te Karere, Te Kaya, Wātea and Kia Ora FM all cover it. And I think one of the best things that's come out of that is that we've formed really great relationships, especially with Te Karere, and they come back to Palmy all the time now to cover our stories. And they've formed a really great relationship with our iwi as well. So that's been a really, really exciting and powerful media outlet to work with. I guess an example is their story of the opening went on their Facebook page and was shared 15,000 times in 1 week. So was a really good one for getting some reach. Social media reach of 20k and at least 100 shares. We kind of blew that out of the park. We reached 236,000 people and we had close to 4,000 shares. All of that data is purely off our page. We haven't included any information from when media share our stories or when we worked with those partners as well. So that's purely just off the council Facebook page. It also had a massive impact, the social media, on our website. It became some of those pages in the first 2 months, they were read for 6 minutes, which is a really long time for a council page. That means that people weren't going there just to find where to access the pathway. They were going there to actually learn more about the history and that kind of thing. And social media continues to be our main driver with He Ara Kotahi and the river. People have gotten engaged on that bridge. There's been weddings on there. There's been all sorts of events. And you can bet that we're always the first ones to find out about it because they tag us on social almost immediately. Exceed the 1,000 commuter trips a day forecast. So in the first weekend, we had 12,000 people use He Ara Kotahi. Between 11 AM and 12 midday on the Saturday, we had 4,000 people on the main bridge alone. When we opened, we had this tracker which couldn't differentiate between groups and individuals. So if there were a group of 5 people, it would only count as one. So our technical result for the year is 600,000 users, but we've actually been doing some data for NZTA over the last few weeks using the last 6 months data where we had individual stats and then kind of superimpose it onto the previous 6 months. And that's well over 1 million users that we've had on He Ara Kotahi in its first year. And I think when you look back and see that we were supposed to have 1,000 people a day, to have 1 million users in the first year is phenomenal. And I think that really came down to our decision to stop talking about it purely as a commuter link, but a major recreation asset for our city and for visitors to our city. coincide with the opening for Instagram and using hashtag. We had more than 200 entries. That hashtag Palmy Proud has really taken off by every man and his dog in our city. Businesses are all over it, we're all over it, residents use it, and the river and Te Ara Kotahi feature significantly in lots of those posts. And that choosing to spend our $500 on that really paid off, in my opinion. The Manawatu River framework was mentioned. So as part of those park surveys that were done late last year, 75% of people down at the river last year knew what the river framework was and what essentially the purpose of it was. They also found that people are using the river more than they previously had, so 3 to 5 times a week compared to 1. And the #1 reason for visiting the river now was for fun rather than for exercise. So I guess that's both a win and a loss, but if they're down there, they're generally moving. So that's probably a great point for us as well. In terms of some learnings for us, this project really taught us about going back to basics and how you can do a really awesome comms job with pretty much no money. Visual storytelling was essential. So having Alex, our videographer and photographer on our team, was everything. That's what got that media there. That's what got our residents to fall in love, especially with the first time anyway. So, you know, if you have got a bit more coin than us, but you don't have someone like that as an internal resource, that's totally where I'd recommend you spend some money. Really consider your end users and your customers. So we had that really good research that people wanted to do there. So photos and stuff had dogs, they had young families, they had picnics, they showed stuff in different ways. We made sure it was really clear that you could get on and off at certain points and do short walks, or you could do long days, that kind of thing. People loved that data we had about how much concrete went on the bridge, how much limestone was used. They leaped that up. Same with how many people were using it. It was kind of like it almost drove a bit of a competition to get more and more each day. Cultural storytelling was key. That's kind of, you know, if you've got that element, use it. It was really, really powerful. And lastly, you don't need a huge budget, but you do need time. I guess you're probably looking at this and seeing how many people we reached out to, how many people we worked with. And to be blunt, this was my life for a couple of months. It was every night, it was every weekend getting it ready. But it really did pay off. And in terms of Te Ara Kotahi, there's still something we talk about constantly. So that top picture there is Urban Eels. We opened that about 6 weeks ago. It's an eel feeding platform along Te Ara Kotahi. Then to the right is a pā site that we're building along on Te Ara Kotahi, where our iwi, one of the most prominent pā sites was. So that's going to be a major lookout. So these are ways that we can continue to talk about Te Ara Kotahi and continue to draw people back there, to draw visitors there. It's also about talking about our river in a more general space and getting them to go down and not just go to Te Ara Kotahi, but to love our river in other ways. So this pattern that you can see down at the bottom there has just been finished in the last week. It's been designed by iwi to represent how the river would have been used as a transport route. The green bits that you can see are these like rocks that absorb UV light and then glow all night long. And it's the first of its kind in Australasia. And our residents have just really fallen in love with that. So I guess what's happened with this project and the great infrastructure and working with our partners here in the river and the comms and marketing that went alongside it was that our residents really have fallen back in love with our river. They have this enormous sense of pride over it. We had an issue late last year where people started to put love locks on the main bridge, and we put out a little fun Facebook post and did some quirky media stories about it, and there has not been one love lock since. People were horrified that people might damage their new bridge. And I guess in terms of that water quality and the very, very end goal, we've had a group set up in the last year focusing on cleaning up some of the streams and tributaries that feed into the Manawatu to make sure that the Manawatu stays as good as it is. And then in the last couple of months, we've done a major consultation about what we do with our wastewater in the future. And at the moment, once that's treated, it goes into the Manawatu River further out of town slightly. And the main submission findings in the 1,000 submissions we received, more than half of them were like, get it out of the river. We don't want our wastewater in our river anymore. So that real change in how our residents in our city view our river, this project has been absolutely fundamental to that. So yeah, that's my presentation. So I can see that there's some questions that I will try and answer for you now. Did the drone footage come out of the $500 budget? The answer is we have an internal resource. Alex is part of our team, so he is free, thankfully, and the drone is part of our assets that we have as a team. So that did not come out of the $500 budget. You say no money, but you have an effort in the FTE cost. Sorry, that was one of the questions about I guess the cost of our time. Yes, I would hate to probably quantify that. It would be quite a lot, but in saying that, this is a $20 million project for our city. We hadn't had a capital investment in our city like this in like 20, 30 years. So it was a big deal, and it needed to be treated as such. Somebody's asked, did he not get paid? I'm assuming you're meaning our videographer. He got paid as part of his salary. And somebody's asked if we did the research or was it commissioned externally. So all the research was done in-house. Comms did some parts of that, and other parts we use some of the research that's done as normal business as usual research. Someone's asked if they can hear more about iwi engagement and advisory group. So how we work with our iwi is that there was a project steering group of which the iwi was part of. But we also have this group called Te Ohanga Māori at Council, which is a group of people that work across different council units who are tasked with bringing the vision of the Manawatu River framework to life, and iwi sit on that with us. We are in full partnership with them. That's a relationship that we're really proud of, and so there's definitely some elements where they influence us, we influence them, and look, this project has really just helped us strengthen our iwi relationships so much stronger than ever before, and you can kind of see it with some of these new projects that we've got. These are all telling the stories of rangitani and around our water. Oh, someone says they're inspired to visit Palmy. That's exciting. If you guys do come, get in touch. We'll send you an awesome itinerary or take you out. Someone's asked if we have an extra $500, where would you have put it? And I actually thought that was going to be a question, so I have an answer, and that is that I would have loved to have done some targeted ads towards people who were, say, within an hour's drive of Palmy. So we really targeted this project to our residents and to get our residents to use it, but to do it more from a tourism perspective, I think would have been very powerful. Also just doing some sustained comms over a longer period of time about different access points, what the deal is with dogs, that kind of stuff. But one of the challenges we do have with this project is that the entrance to the main bridge is in a residential area, and there was a lot of concern before it opened about what those traffic impacts were going to be. So the comms we do is a real balance between how we get people to use Hiara Kotahi, but also how they use it by foot or by cycling, so that the people that live in that area aren't adversely affected. And I think we could have done heaps of marketing. We could have done newspaper and radio and all of that, but I actually don't know whether it would have had much more impact than what we had through user-generated kind of content and how we are continuing to talk about it. Someone else has said they're re-inspired to visit Palmy, so that's cool. I was a Massey student many years ago and recall the headwind across the Fitzherbert Bridge. Yeah, Palmy is still a bit windy, so that is, the Hiara Kotahi still has some wind, but you're definitely much more sheltered along the journey. I haven't got any more questions coming in. Oh, yes, here we go. Talking to people within 1 hour, did you partner with the next door regional council on comms? So our regional council Horizons, they run the Manawatu River Accord, which is something that was set up around a decade ago in response to all that negative publicity about the river quality. And so there's about 50 organisations on that, and so Horizons kind of do the comms for that, and they definitely were champions of He Ara Kotahi. We worked really closely with them on that project, and you know, from an infrastructure perspective, there was a heap of resource consents. There was putting stuff on stream beds to build bridges. They were a really powerful and really helpful tool to really bring this project to life. Any negative comments from car lovers? Yes, they're very few and far between. We're blessed. If you have time, check out our Facebook page. We have a really fun atmosphere on our social media accounts, and we are very lucky that when someone is being a bit of a dick, our residents jump in and call them out on it. So on a post about He Ara Kotahi, or the bridge, it's very common that we get about 100, more than 100 comments. We'd be lucky if we get one. Those people have just really just kind of stopped talking about that now. However, the discussion about us needing another car bridge is definitely still something that is being discussed, and that I'm sure will happen one day in the future. Did we deal with any negative media or ratepayer organisations? We don't really have any ratepayer organisations here. That's probably Neighbourly for us, or the people who jump on Neighbourly and whinge. It was definitely a big investment. So our council contribution to He Ara Kotahi was around $7 million. And the media did like to, our local media did kind of call us out on some stuff and try and, I guess, find the negatives where they could. And an example was we put in a toilet block near that main bridge a couple of months after it opened, and a lot of, they asked us how much it cost to build that toilet, and it was about 170,000, and a normal public toilet's about 100,000. And so we simply just explained that it was due to the extension of the plumbing that was needed, and because the stuff that goes into the river environment, we've made a commitment that it needs to be really environmentally friendly, so that because the Manawatu does flood quite often, that if anything was to be washed down the river, that you know, it's in its most natural state as possible. And actually the residents called the paper out on it for just being negative Nancy's. So again, they yeah, dealt with that. A lot of our comms budget goes on front footing the naysayers and NIMBYs. Did we have to spend any money on mitigating the damage from these people? No, we didn't. You know, we work really hard with some of those residents who especially live really close. They were very, I guess, kind of concerned about what it would mean. And I don't think anyone really ever foresaw just how popular it was going to be. But that's something that we continue to work on with them. We're continuing to talk to them. We constantly keep them updated. We actually just got some NZTA funding as part of the Innovating Streets Fund to do some work on traffic calming in that area up there. So that's something that we get to work with them on. So it really shows to them that, you know, we're committed to like this project, but also making sure that their community continues to be the community that they brought in and that they love. Oh, I think that might be it. That looks like all the questions.
There's quite a few questions in there. Thank you so much for that presentation. There's quite a few comments as well, just saying how interesting it was and the beautiful imagery as well. And a comment as well, just saying, I'm sure Aucklanders are looking with envy at your bridge. So.
Oh, come to Palmy, honestly. It's, you know, you can actually afford to buy a house here. I have a 5-minute commute to work. While you guys are all still travelling home from work, I'm home with my child cooking dinner. So it is a really nice place to live. And, you know, from a comms salary perspective, it's a small pay cut, but it's not, it's definitely, in terms of the cost of living, it's, it pays off.
Yeah, well, you've definitely re-inspired me to come visit again. It's been a long time since I've been there.
Yay!
Cool. So we might end it there. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining today's webinar. So The case study booklet will be released. It will be released along with our new website tomorrow. So if any of you have been to the PRINZ website, it is currently down as we're launching a new website, which we hope that you will love. So the recording and the book and a link to the booklet will be sent out tomorrow. Excellent. Thank you so much and have a great day, everyone.